I'm going to begin as people are starting to join. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Nussbaum. I'm a Senior Engagement Manager working on Landing Carbon Lab as well as Global Forest Watch, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our webinar today. We are so excited to introduce you to Global Nature Watch, Landing Carbon Lab's new AI-powered tool designed to turn trusted data on land and nature into actionable insights. Before we begin, just some housekeeping information. This webinar is being held in English only, although please stay connected with us to learn more about upcoming webinars in other languages. In addition, feel free to enter any questions or comments you may have in the Q&A. There's a button at the bottom of your screen to be able to do this. We'll be either answering your questions in written form directly in that Q&A box, and then we'll also save some time in the end to answer some of the questions that come in that you've posed throughout the webinar. Today we'll hear from a great variety of really good speakers. We'll hear from Craig Mills, Director of Landing Carbon Lab, to introduce Global Nature Watch and share why this moment matters. We're also thrilled to be joined today by Kelly Levin from the Bezos Earth Fund, a key partner in developing Global Nature Watch, who'll be offering some opening reflections. You'll get a demo of Global Nature Watch and see it in action, and learn also how you can get involved to help shape the future of its development. And then we'll hear from some early users who've already had some hands-on experience with Global Nature Watch. From Ecologic Development Fund, we'll be joined by Barbara Barreirino and Marco Acevedo. And from the Pulitzer Center, we'll hear from Kwang Hang Kyrsur. At the end of the webinar, we'll end it with a session to answer some of your questions and also some closing remarks. So now I'd love to hand the floor to Craig Mills, Director of Landing Carbon Lab.
Hey everyone. Yeah, nice to be here, and thank you so much for joining. It looks like we've still got some participants coming in, as always with our Landing Carbon Lab webinars. They're always very popular, so hugely appreciate you being here. We do these webinars primarily because as we're advancing, whether that's monitoring science or building AI systems to do monitoring, we want to make sure that at the earliest possible moment we can share it with our community. We're seeing a world now where, certainly with artificial intelligence, things are moving very quickly. And so these are kind of the opportunities that we like to share what we're doing, learn from each other, have conversations, and to kind of bring the levels of monitoring science kind of up across the whole community. So thank you for joining us. Today I'm going to talk to you about Global Nature Watch, and I'll probably mention the two letters which I'm sure everyone has heard thousands of times over the last year is artificial intelligence, AI. And why are we talking so much about AI, and why are we building AI systems? And I think there's three primary reasons why we're doing it. The first one is one of reach. We know that when we bring monitoring data into the hands of, certainly in our experience with things like Global Forest Watch, into the hands of people that have a direct impact on how land is managed, then we see really positive conservation outcomes, whether that's huge reductions in deforestation or some fantastic restoration outcomes. We think with the use, especially of large language model and agent AI, it will be possible to reach more people, because now we can have systems which allows you to ask questions in your own language, using your own terms, having systems which understand you, and being able to deliver information to you in exactly the way you want. So we see reach as like the ability to accelerate how many people can use monitoring systems to accelerate massively. And the second one is through our geospatial artificial intelligence. We're now able to do and see things that we couldn't see before. You know, whether that's measuring the height of trees in restoration sites 8 months after being planted from space, to measuring the extent of grasslands. We're using geospatial artificial intelligence to really find insights that previously were near impossible. And then the third one I sort of would like to raise is around cost. the cost of producing monitoring systems up until now has been extremely high, and we think with this investment in our work with Land and Carbon Lab and Global Nature Watch, we're going to see a drastic reduction in cost, both to produce data and to use it. And with that, combined with our general principles of making everything we do free and open and available, whether that's our data, our science, our technology, we see that as a real opportunity to scale monitoring. And so, yeah, I'm incredibly excited. I'll show you in a minute all about Global Nature Watch. But before, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Kelly Levin. She's the Chief of Science, Data and Systems Change at the Bezos Earth Fund. And perhaps for those that don't know, the Land and Carbon Lab was founded by the Bezos Earth Fund and the World Resources Institute. And we've worked incredibly closely together over the last 4 or 5 years, producing some pretty incredible monitoring systems and monitoring science. So with that, I'll pass over to Kelly.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Craig. It's a privilege to be with all of you and also just to get to this moment where we have Global Nature Watch. It's super exciting. Before we dive into the demo, I just wanted to take a few minutes to explain why we at the Bezos Earth Fund are so excited to be building Global Nature Watch, and how it fits into this larger effort that we're all part of to protect and restore nature. Across our work, and I'm sure many of yours, we keep seeing this same challenge that we don't really have the systems to truly know in real time or near real time what's happening to the planet. We know that ecosystems are changing really fast, but monitoring is often fragmented or expensive and sometimes behind paywalls. And too often we find out that deforestation or degradation or restoration effects are happening only after the fact. And it makes it hard then to direct resources where they're needed most, to hold ourselves accountable, to measure progress towards goals like 30 by 30, protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030. And Global Nature Watch is designed to close this gap. It pulls together satellite data and field observations and other data and uses artificial intelligence to process, to interpret the data automatically. And the goal, as Craig said, is pretty simple. Deliver deeper insight that is accessible, reach a greater number of people who are going to be decision makers all around the world, and lower monitoring costs. At the Earth Fund, we're thinking a lot about AI, and we think that the next generation of monitoring is going to be defined by AI. The amount of environmental data at our fingertips right now, it is so extensive, from satellites to drones to acoustic sensors. It offers so much potential, but it also demands really new tools to unlock its value. And AI can help, all of us make sense of this vast and complex data, detect patterns, to fill gaps, to translate raw information into something that's actionable. And it certainly won't ever replace human judgment. It's just going to be strengthening it and providing, analytical power that is going to allow us to act with greater speed, and actually direct resources where it's most needed. But in addition to monitoring, we think that AI is going to be central to solving some of the world's hardest environmental issues. It gives us insight into where we really need to focus our efforts. So this platform is going to be able to help us understand our protected areas staying intact, our saplings from restoration efforts surviving, are they growing? Are ecosystems stabilizing? Are they under pressure? And most importantly, it's been designed with a wide range of users in mind, anywhere from park rangers who need to detect illegal clearing, or enforcement officers who are monitoring compliance in protected areas, or local governments and communities managing restoration, or companies who are verifying their deforestation free supply chains. And everyone is going to be looking at the same core data and AI insights, but it's going to be customized, as Craig is going to show, to their own needs. And even even your own languages, which is just pretty incredible. So, as you watch this demo, think of Global Nature Watch as part of a shift from simply just describing environmental change to managing it. So it gives us the tools not only to understand what's happening around the globe, but also the ability to do something about it. Thanks so much. Over to you, Craig.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Okay, right. So I'm going to give you a quick demo of Global Nature Watch. I'm going to ask, I think Gabby's in charge of the slides, so I'll just say next slide and it's time to move on. All right, so I'm going to get into the details straight away. So what is Global Nature Watch? What is it technically? So what happens in Global Nature Watch is you ask it a question. We have a system of artificial intelligence agents behind the scenes that work together to understand the requests that are coming in, and then they deliver back information to you in the most accurate, relevant way as possible. The way it understands what's going on and what's happening in the world is it pulls data and information from Global Forest Watch and Land and Carbon Lab, which that data has been created by hundreds, if not thousands, of researchers and partners around the world. And we take that verifiable, authoritative data and bring it into our AI system. Next slide, please. And then on top of that, we've also taught our AI about some of our sort of things around the science, the documentation, the metadata, all of our research. So it has a fuller picture of what it means when you're asking it questions and how it can deliver information back to you. And then the response can be text, spatial data, charts, and it's available in 170 languages, which is a big jump from where we were in the past. Next slide. Now, if you've been following the Land and Carbon Lab over the years, you'll know we regularly release new global data sets, which are really pushing the boundaries of land monitoring. And these are some of the data sets that you can see today into Global Nature Watch. So I don't have time to go through all of these now, but there's probably webinars on these already, so you can go back. But just to give you some examples, we have global land cover annually, 30-meter resolution. We've got forest greenhouse gas, net flux, emissions removals, and that's also annual and coming up, something to look out for. And then in some of the future webinars, we'll be able to share with you GHG flux removals and emissions across all land beyond forests as well. Tree cover loss by dominant drivers, gain, ecosystem alerts. So we've got, right now, the system is able to generate a huge amount of insights from the existing data that we've got. Next slide, please. All right, back one. At the moment, globalnaturewatch.org is available to everyone. As of today, you have to sign up and you get joined on a wait list, and we gradually let people into the wait list. The reasons why we're doing that currently is we want to be really careful about these AI systems. We want to make sure they are the most accurate, precise systems that we can be, and anyone who's aware and uses artificial intelligence knows these systems can hallucinate, it's called, where you think it's right, but it's actually wrong. And so a lot of what we're doing is making sure that the systems that we're making work well. So we're gradually letting people in, we're gradually adding more data, and through that we learn levels of accuracy, and we can adjust the system to make sure it's as precise as we can. We're expecting in the next month, certainly by the end of the year, that we'll be opening the system for anyone and there'll be no wait list. And we've made some big strides in a number of areas. So I'll talk a little bit about those in a minute. Next slide, please. So what sort of things can you ask of Global Nature Watch? One of the things, so here's an example. Could you tell me how much vegetation was converted to cropland in Spain over the past decade? And so, next slide. This is what it will look like. You'll type this into your interface. Currently, this is sort of an English answer, and it goes off. It finds information. This looks like it's from our land cover data, and you can start to ask it questions about what's happening in those places, and it gives you answers and charts. You can then carry on having conversations, so you can learn more about the data, and you can even go as far as summarizing this into formats that you like, whether that's an email to a policymaker or I mean, even a LinkedIn post or a tweet, whatever you choose to do, these systems are so powerful they can organize this information in infinite number of ways. So this is just one example. So I'll keep going. Next slide, please. Wildfires have been in the news a lot over the past year. Can you show me wildfire trends in California in the past 2 decades? So something else to point out, we've optimized this also for mobile phones. And actually, one thing we're realizing with these systems as they're starting to be used is they lend themselves to chat interfaces very nicely. And so one of the things we're looking at doing next year is being able to incorporate these things into like messaging apps like WhatsApp, so you can have conversations with our intelligence, and you can learn about monitoring in the places that you need to know about it. So again, coming back to this point about reach, if you're not in front of a powerful computer, but you're able to use WhatsApp, these systems now become available to people and in their own language. And again, you can see that we can get summaries and charts and maps of what's happening in these places. So one of the points there, just at the end, there was like you can start to do things like comparisons of areas and comparisons of dates if you're looking at that too. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we can also, as I said, you can use Global Nature Watch in 170 languages. This is backed by Google Gemini, soon to be Google Gemini 3. Which was released a couple of days ago. And what that means is we get the power of some of these frontier large language models, which allows us to use different languages. Now, it works better in some languages than others, but what we found in our testing, it works really well in many, many languages. And so we've seen already with some of our partners, they're incredibly excited to be able to get this system to their communities where they perhaps don't speak one of the 5 or 6 typical languages you normally see in these monitoring systems. Next slide. What's really nice is it returns everything in the language that you're speaking in or you're writing in, and it gives you the information that you need. In this case, we're looking at the SBTN Natural Lands Map of 2020, very useful data set for companies doing reporting. And it brings back information in a similar form. Next slide. All right, so I hope you're getting a sense of the power and possibility with this system. I hope you didn't hear the ambulances going past. In what year did the Cobalpo protected areas in Bolivia experience most forest loss? Since 2002. Next slide, please. So one of the things in here we're building into this are a set of areas of interest, like protected areas, administrative regions, key biodiversity areas, states, countries, continents. So when you ask questions of Global Nature Watch, it can look at all sorts of different scales. And we're going to be keeping adding to that as well. So behind the scenes, our agents are like trying to figure out where you're talking about in the world, and it finds that place, and then it goes and finds the data sets that are necessary to answer your question. So again, you can see this is at multiple scales. This is incredibly powerful. I mean, we have data now at 30-meter resolution, which will be able to tell you if land has changed every 3 to 5 days. And we have data which will soon be added, which will be able to tell you things like the height of trees at 1 meter resolution. So you can see this system can work at, like, if you're wanting to know things at a continental scale or you wanted to know things at a protected area scale, you can see how this system can work at both. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight really here one of our new grasslands data sets. So it's monitoring grasslands has proven to be a very tricky scientific problem for our community over the last few decades. And so we thought, as part of Land & Carbon Lab, we'd try and see if we could create annual, just like forests, create annual data sets on grassland change across the world in all grasslands. And it turns out we did. That's publicly and freely available, the data and the science and all the methodologies, but we've also integrated it into Global Nature Watch. Next slide, please. So again, you can look across these data sets, look for trends and see trends happening across multiple years and start making decisions and judgments based on those things. You can go into more detail, you can start comparing to different regions, and you can start to build out kind of a solid picture of what's happening. At this point, you could even go in and say, okay, but tell me what happened last week, tell me what happened last month. What disturbances were we seeing in these areas, and Global Nature Watch is able to look at multiple timescales as well. So incredibly powerful. Okay, next slide. All right, so we released Global Nature Watch in a closed beta a few months back. We did that deliberately because we wanted to test it on hundreds and hundreds of users. I think we've had over 1,000 users currently registered, and a number in the waiting list as well. We're now going to open it up in the next month or so. But the reason we did that is because no one's really built these systems before. So we kind of wanted to learn how people were going to use them and then adjust before we made it fully public. We have, as WRI and the Bezos Earth Fund, we have a responsibility here to make sure that we're providing trusted, credible, accurate information, and so we take that really seriously. So before we were willing to sort of take the wait list off, we wanted to make sure that it was accurate, it was transparent and reliable. And 3 things that our users told us. We needed to make sure when we first released it, anyone who's making these things at the moment, if there's any sort of engineers and product builders on this call, you'll know we left the intelligence kind of open a little bit. So we sort of allowed it to interpret data the way it saw fit. We allowed it to aggregate and do things with data which maybe were testing the limits of these systems, but we wanted to see how well it would perform under closed kind of experimental conditions. And what we saw was sometimes the intelligence would be a bit too excited in its opinions on what was happening. Sometimes it would say something significant when it wasn't, or say something was incredible when it wasn't. And so we had to work on strengthening the trustworthiness of the answers there. We also worked on the precision and how it used data sets. Sometimes it was over enthusiastic and using data sets in the wrong way. So we really worked on making sure that it understood the limitations of our data. It's funny, these systems are about teaching and intelligence, and these are the sorts of things we have to teach it. So that was what we did there. Another big request that we had was to make sure that it was really easy to see the process of analyzing data and why our AIs were doing the things that we're doing. So our ability to flag when something was generated by AI and when something was not, make sure that we were clear about the limitations of when you should and shouldn't use it, but also start to show the clear workflows of first I took this data set, then I overlaid it with this thing and I showed it in this polygon, that kind of stuff. So what we've been doing is kind of really making a very clear trace of what the intelligence is doing. So you can repeat it, you can look back at it, and you can kind of feel that it's transparent and it's not some black box working in a way that you don't understand. So that was a big thing that we've been working on for the last few months. And then finally, in the first version, we were using large language models to create the charts, aggregate data, do all sorts of things, which we discovered that it's nearly good enough to do it, but not quite. So maybe it works 8 out of 10 times. We realized for us that wasn't good enough. We wanted to make sure every time we showed a chart, every time, or 999 times out of 1,000 we showed a chart, or it did a kind of I don't know, it averaged across numbers or it added things up, that it would get it right. That was one sort of a line we said we couldn't get it wrong. So we changed how it worked. And again, for those that are kind of trying to build these systems or thinking about building these systems, now the AI gets the data. The data is from models that have been peer reviewed and validated, and then generates code rather than generates the insight. And then the code executes on the data, and that produces the charts. And so what that does is it means the charts are always match the data that's been provided, where sometimes in the mix of large language models that was missing, but now it does. And it's the same in the numbers you see in the text. it was mostly right, but not 100% right. So we just needed to make sure it was right more often. And again, by getting the AIs to generate code which runs rather than generating the raw insights, it makes such a difference. I'm sure over time, as these AIs evolve, maybe that won't be necessary, but maybe. But right now, if we're going to make this stuff available to everyone, we want to make sure it works and is reliable and as accurate as possible. That's really important to us. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that's me. Thank you so much. If you, I see there's many questions coming in now, so I look forward to answering those, but I'll pass over to Gabby.
Yeah, thank you. So just a few other things you'll find if you are testing out Global Nature Watch. Firstly, there is a help center that's linked at the top of the interface. And here you'll find some more information about how Global Nature Watch works, which data sets are currently included in Global Nature Watch for insights, some tips on building great prompts, and also some answers to frequently asked questions that you may have, which I definitely recommend you take a look at. There's also a place where you can submit some feedback. If you find a bug, you can report it here. A lot of this information is also built in the Global Nature Watch interface itself, so you can just directly ask it questions about itself, about its underlying data, and about its capabilities. But it's also here in the Help Center should you need it and should you want to remember how to contact us. Your feedback on Global Nature Watch is invaluable to us, and we would really love for you all to test it out and share with us how it's working for you. Everyone who is registered on this webinar will get an email following the webinar where you will be invited to register your own account and test it out for yourself. You can provide feedback directly in Global Nature Watch. There's a thumbs up or thumbs down buttons at the bottom of each insight that it provides, and you can click those buttons, and if it's not giving correct information, you can there would be a dialog box where you can explain it a bit further. You can also email us directly with any feedback or bugs you encounter. We really want to hear from you, and we want to also hear how you're using the tool, where it's useful within your own workflows, and also what you hope that we could develop more of into it. We really want your input to help shape its future. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it on to Barbara and Marco to talk about Ecologic Development Fund's work and where how Global Nature Watch is potentially fitting in after they've tried it out. So on to you guys.
Thank you very much, Gabby and WRI colleagues, for inviting us to share our work and for giving us early access to this tool. We were definitely very excited and impressed with what we saw. So next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of who we are, since 1993, Ecologic has worked to empower rural and indigenous peoples to restore and protect tropical ecosystems in Central America and Mexico. We work with local partner organizations in each of these countries, in Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico, to provide access to tools and training, access to strategic networks when community voices can be shared and there can be regional exchanges, and access to catalytic incentives that can really foster the adoption of sustainable practices in the long term. And at the end of the day, we really believe that local leadership is essential and that those people living in and around threatened ecosystems are in the best position to protect them. Next slide. So this builds off our previous work with Global Forest Watch. We implemented a grant over 2022 and 2023 where our focus was to train local community brigades in each of the countries where we work. So it was a very regional effort. And we ended up training over 1,200 individuals in the use of Global Forest Watch, the Forest Watcher app, using drone technology to enhance local monitoring efforts. And there was a lot of interest, a lot of demand, and especially with the younger generations in this work. Next slide, please. So here are just some images of that process, just to give you a flavor and a sense of what that looked like. And next slide, please. And I think, as has been mentioned earlier, some of our observations and lessons learned is that existing technology tools are often too expensive or overly technical, which can lead to barriers and really widespread use at the local level. And conservation technology, we believe, must be grounded and enhanced with local and indigenous knowledge to really be effective. And so we were really excited to see how Global Nature Watch can provide some of that connective tissue and be a bridge that can really link those efforts. And so now my colleague Marco will tell you a little bit more about how we experimented with the tool.
Thank you, Barbara. Next slide. Building on the lessons learned from our project, we identified 3 potential use scenarios where communities might find Global Nature Watch helpful. First one, to validate spatial information with communities. Second, to support high-level planning with partners. And third, to strengthen fundraising and proposal development efforts. Based on these, we selected a potential case study in Oaxaca and approached the platform as first-time users without any previous training. Next one, please. We asked to Global Nature Watch show me the deforestation trends in Oaxaca over the last 20 years. And right away, we got a chart, a summary, and a zoom into the area of interest. The key point of this finding was that the chart and the summary mentioned that there was a loss of almost 34,000 hectares of tree cover in 2019. This information was helpful because we got basic data for smart planning. Next one, please. However, this is just the big picture. As you can see on the slide, that's the state of Oaxaca, Mexico, and our area of interest is smaller. Next one. So based on that, we asked the platform once again to consider a specific layer to continue the analysis, the ejido layer of Rancho Faisán. As a side note, for those who don't know the term ejido, it's a system of communal land in Mexico collectively owned and managed by a community. So after a few seconds, the platform generated a summarized analysis, and it found that the highest tree loss happened from 2017 to 2019 at both the state and the ejido levels, and suggested that regional factors are driving deforestation across the whole area. So basically, the platform linked high-level trends with the on-ground reality based on available datasets. But we asked the questions: what happens when the datasets are limited or doesn't exist within the system? Next slide, please. We asked a specific question, which basically in Mexico, when we use specific data, we requested the INEGI layers. So it gave us an answer. No access to the specific INEGI layers were available, but it provided us 2 alternatives to either analyze the drivers of tree cover loss or evaluate land cover change. So we immediately agreed to both analyses. Next one, please. The results created a chart that compares the main drivers of tree loss at both the state and the ejido level and revealed 3 critical insights: the scale of the problem, the main driver of deforestation, and the relevance of shifting cultivations, but also gave us a glimpse of this analysis, highlighting the importance of the mix of intense and traditional practices that may allow forest regeneration. Next one, please. The next analysis also detailed and highlighted the 3 main land cover transitions for the period that I was examining, including the number of hectares involved. Next one. But it also gave us an explanation. It's highlighted that the community was implementing effective forest management practices, that there was an active landscape transformation showing that both development and conservation were happening on the land, and that the traditional ejido system was supporting sustainable land use despite ongoing development pressures. Coincidentally, this period overlaps with our intervention, and data may be interpreted as a sign of our effectiveness. Next, Barbara.
So some conclusions that we can draw from that initial experiment with the tool is, really, we think that Global Nature Watch can be a powerful tool to foster community-led conservation, enabling faster decision-making and increasing transparency and accountability. But at the end of the day, its impact, I think, depends on meaningful engagement. So really providing lots of hands-on training so that there can be true ownership locally. So we would love to continue working with Global Nature Watch team and WRI to expand opportunities for training and onboarding across our partner communities and other communities in the region to deepen skills and confidence in the use of the tool, to really capture and share lessons learned, develop case studies, have peer-to-peer exchanges, which we think are very effective, and leverage the community-generated data so that they can really be advocates at the policy level and to procure the resources that they need to continue this work on the ground. So thank you very much, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much. Yes, now we'll hear from another use case on the ground and another organization who's been testing out Global Nature Watch and seeing how it can apply. So I'd like to introduce Kang here, who Kang will talk about the Pulitzer Center's work and how Global Nature Watch could potentially feed into some of your workflows. So go ahead.
Thank you, Gabriel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is King. I am the data editor at the Pulitzer Center. So I will just do a quick introduction. At the Pulitzer Center, we are a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. But half of our staff is actually outside of the US. I am based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which means now it's almost 10:30 p.m. here. And what we do is that we are an organization that support journalism. We champion the power of stories to make complex issues relevant and inspire action. So next year we are celebrating our 20th birthday, right? So we have been, in the journalism field for 20 years, and we advance our missions through 3 core strategies, which is the game-changing resources, breakthrough journalism, and also audience-centered engagement. So we don't just inform the audience, through our reporting. We want to help people make sense of complex, this complex, noisy, and disconnected world, and so that they are able to discover their place in it. So the support that we give to journalists, we don't do the reporting ourselves, but we channel funding and other kind of support to journalists all over the world to pursue in-depth stories on issues, including human rights, climate change, AI accountability, and we provide funding in the formats of grants, fellowships. We also do training, and we train journalists to how to engage with their audience. And we also do research. We also publish tools. We develop our reporting tools that support journalists to do investigation. And we are building a global network of journalists, and so that they are able to tell the most powerful stories possible. And in this webinar about Global Nature Watch, I would like to focus, our work on the Rainforest Investigation Network. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we support journalists through funding as well as fellowships. And one of the 4 fellowships, we call it the Rainforest Investigations Network. So basically, we recruit a network of journalists, usually between 8 to 10 fellows in the network, and we support them as for 12 months. They will be funded by us, and within these 12 months, they will do a in-depth, and we hope we will be very impactful reporting or investigation that is looking into environmental wrongdoings, specifically in tropical rainforest region. So we are talking about Southeast Asia, Congo Basin, as well as the Amazon. And these are full-time fellowships. And during the 12-month fellowships, they receive funding from us, training, and data and research support. So my role as the data editor is that I'm leading a team of 7 members. We provide data and research support, for our journalists to do their investigation. And many of these investigations are actually driven by geospatial data analysis. And this is where Global Nature Watch, comes in very handy. And we are really exciting to find, to know about this tool. And I have done some testing on this tool, and I think it has a lot of potential. Gabriel, next slide, please. So I'll just share with you one story that we did 2 years ago. So this is a story about land grabbing in the Brazilian Amazon. We uncovered through data of land ownerships and land registration. We discovered the largest ever land grab in the Brazilian Amazon. So land grabbing simply means that some people use the loophole in the legal framework to privatize public land, right? And these are pristine forests in the Amazon, and they converted that into other kind of commercial purposes. In this case, it is a large land that was converted into soy plantation. So we use a lot of geospatial data, for example, the data from Global Forest Watch, to analyze forest degradation and also its causes. We wanted to know, what caused deforestation, and also who is behind deforestation, who owns the land, who provided the machinery, right? All the enablers, that are behind deforestation. So in this case, you can imagine that we'll have to rely on a lot of geospatial data, including data from Global Forest Watch, including satellite imagery. And we do geospatial analysis of satellite imagery to find out, when the deforestation happened, how fast, because the speed of deforestation could tell us whether this is smallholder or is it a large scale industrial operation, right? Those will help us to decide whether it's worth our resources to investigate a case, right? If it's a large scale deforestation, then of course there will be big players behind them. Next slide, please. Right. So what I found very useful is that in the past, the analysis that we need to spend probably days to do, now it would only cost us a few minutes to get a result. So as I mentioned, I am based in Malaysia, and we have some of the oldest rainforests in the world. So I did a quick test of, I select a state in Malaysia where there is still pristine rainforest there. And I, asked the AI or LLM to tell me, what is the tree cover trend in 5 years from 2020 to 2024. So you can see in this case that just now Craig also showed different examples. It was able to give me a chart and the data in just a few sentences and also a few clicks. Usually this kind of analysis, in the past, we need to go to Global Forest Watch. And what we usually do is that, we would download the data and we'll put it into QGIS. Then we have to overlap with other data sets and do all kind of analysis, right, to get the results that we want. So in this case, I really like that everything is on one platform, and we are able to pull different data sets into one platform, and it really lowers the barrier of many journalists. Actually, most of the journalists, they are not very, when it comes to geospatial analysis, they are not very savvy in that case. So a lot of this research actually come to my team, and we are supporting over 40 journalists. So we will have to do a lot of back and forth with them and also doing the analysis from them. And this tool really will speed up, our workflow. Next slide, please. So what I really like, besides what I think Craig has shown us earlier, I don't have to repeat that, is that there are several features here that are really useful for environmental journalists. One is that it shows you the train of thought, right? So we do not just want the results. We also need to verify the result because, this is journalistic work. So it is very important for us to look at how LLM reach the conclusion. So that's why we are able to review and do our fact checking. And I also asked the LLM, different questions. For example, I purposely chose some vague question. Say that, I have this area in Pahang in the state in Malaysia. And I said that I have questions about carbon credit project, right? I wanted to know whether there is any logging activities in the area within this 5-year period. And then I just give a very open-ended questions, what kind of analysis I can do, all right? And it's quite impressive that the LLM actually told me what is possible within this platform, what kind of data sets are available, and what kind of analysis can be done. So this is, I think, very important for journalists because we are able to use it as a research assistant, right? And sometimes we also need to brainstorm ideas with someone. And if you don't have a physical human talking to you, in this case, this platform can be a very good, brainstorm buddy, right? And another good thing, of course, is we need to tell our story in engaging ways because nowadays, audience, of course, they are more visually engaged. So in this case, the charts, the maps, and the use of colors, I think those are really help us to speed up our news production and our research process by a lot, right? Before I end my sharing, I also have some concerns and also questions. First is that I think there's an upload button, but I think the upload function is not ready yet because it would be really amazing if we are able to upload our own polygon or the geospatial borders, right? Because in our case, we usually have a specific area that we want to do analysis. And the second thing is that we are always asking all kind of AI products. The same question is, how safe is our data after we upload to the platform? Okay, in this case, will it be kept by Global Nature Watch? For how long? And another question is whether the data will be accessed by the LLM that Global Nature Watch is using, right? And if that is the case, will our data be used to train their models, right? And how safe is our data? Because sometimes we work on sensitive data. Even uploading a border or a polygon, might tell people what we are looking at. And that is something that many journalists would be very reluctant to do. That's all my sharing, and yeah, happy to have further discussion and answer questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Kang. Yeah, those are also just some really good insights and some good feedback. And that's really what we're looking from all of you, as well as you're testing and trying it out, is all of these feedback of where it's helping and also where we could do better. So thank you both. So now we're going to go into the Q&A. We've had a lot of questions so far come in. So I'm going to start. Let me stop sharing so we can highlight everyone. Or did I already stop? There we go. There we go. So I'm gonna start with a question to Marco and Barbara. What are the biggest barriers to using AI tools and outputs with Indigenous communities, Indigenous peoples and local communities?
You want to take this one, Marco?
Yeah, probably it's as Kang mentioned about the use of local datasets or local boundaries. If the communities can provide or get access to that information, right at a time that they require that without actual knowledge of the tool, it will be helpful for them. So basically, if you can provide that and the tool can help the communities to make the best use of the data, it will be awesome. I mean, that's where the impact will happen.
I think also language, we mentioned that there's many languages available. We did test for some of the local indigenous languages where we work, and they were not available. So hopefully that will also continue to be enhanced.
Yeah, thanks. That's helpful, and I agree. Hopefully, some of those languages will continue to be added. I think it's always a growing list. The next question for Craig. Nature covers a lot more. It covers all of biodiversity. Are there any plans to bring in other dimensions of nature in the future to Global Nature Watch beyond just, things like land cover change and wildfires?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah, I think sometimes there's multiple reasons why we say forests were monitored first. From a sort of scientific reason, it's easier to see when they disappear from space. To monitor those things at scale. Clearly, there's obviously ecological and many other reasons why we should monitor forests, but from a sort of the scientific research, that was more advanced than many other places. Our next step was to advance the science, the monitoring science around places beyond forests like grasslands. But then when we start getting into biodiversity, which we could talk about all day what that is, but if we're talking about more refined monitoring of ecosystems or species, or even like genetic diversity, or even the condition of ecosystems, then we're starting to get into the territory of new ways of doing monitoring. And so this is something we're just stepping into now. And with all our monitoring, we don't do this alone. So we generally work with other academic or like research partners, and this will be no exception. But maybe the short answer is yes, we will be getting into it. The longer answer is we're seeing great promise in a combination of the geospatial foundation modeling processes and our ability to monitor species distributions and traits at scale in ways which we couldn't do before, and blend those two things together. But it's kind of pretty primary research at the moment. It's pretty early days. Because we like to think of trying to monitor broadly at global scales, there's many good studies showing how you monitor biodiversity locally, but not so much at a global scale. So yeah, it's a huge interesting area to us, included, and I would add to that sort of biodiversity and water, kind of two areas where we're getting a lot of interest and a lot of people asking us questions of whether we can expand the platform to those areas. We're right at the beginning of it, but I do see us over the next maybe 3 or 4 years being able to add that type of capability to something like Global Nature Watch.
Great, thanks. I have a question for Kang. How do you approach fact-checking AI outputs when working on investigative journalism pieces?
So first, we need to, of course, we need to know the sources. We also use LLM for many other research purposes, and so we need to make sure that the source is reliable. So in this case, because it's very easy to look at the sources. And the second thing is, of course, how did the LLM, or how did you reach the conclusion? So there was one question that mentioned about, is it possible to share the script that the LLM used to derive the answers? I think it could be very useful if the journalist who is able to read scripts and codes is able to access the codes and verify that by itself. But the other thing is the verification part can be also done by questioning the LLM. So if you're not a technical person, you are not able to read the script, then maybe you can ask the LLM to say that, okay, tell me how you reached this, show me your calculation, explain to me your formula. And those are the few steps that we are able to do the verification and fact checking. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I think similarly, I wonder, Barbara and Marco, do you have similar concerns or issues when thinking about like checking on the outputs and how you're communicating that to local communities?
Yes, I mean we haven't really actively used AI in this way. So I think if we, once this becomes public and we actually start using it, we would definitely have to include that aspect in how we would use it. But like so far, this hasn't been something that we've been actively using in our work. Michael, would you add anything?
Well, the potential use is there. I mean, we'll be talking about how this can help increasing the participation of communities, but also how the information is powerful for them. And when you don't have access to that kind of information or the personal with the expertise required to generate that kind of data, when you have a personal assistant, which is basically the artificial intelligence, it will be great and helpful for them. So the potential is there, but at the moment, I believe that there's still some kind of inquiries about the reliability of the information, if there's no hallucination about the generated data and how we can validate that. But based on our first approach and the use case that we try, I mean, it gave us that some of the data weren't available and gave us options to where to ask or how to approach that kind of question without actually giving false information. So the potential is there, and I believe that it would be better when more modules are added and probably more data sets.
Great. You mentioned about hallucinations, and we have a question about that for Craig. So how are you thinking about avoiding LLM hallucinations, and how are we mitigating that with Global Nature Watch?
Yeah, sure. So to remind people what hallucinations are, if I'm sure we all know now, but just in case, the hallucinations are when we have these systems which give you an answer which kind of looks right, but it's just very convincing. It's like a human lying to you. It can be very convincing, right? We often don't spot it. So it's kind of the worst kind of mistakes, because you can kind of go along with it and you don't realize it's wrong. So we've always had to handle error and precision in all of our monitoring work. And so this adds another layer to it. This is just an extra layer. Now, the interesting thing here is that certainly for us is, as alongside building their monitoring streams and the agentic AI systems, we have another stream that runs in parallel, which is designing new methodologies and new ways of measuring whether intelligence is correct or not. And so we currently do that in a number of ways. The base of it, the data, if you like, the truth, is peer reviewed. It goes into scientific processes. It gets torn apart by like the scientific community and put back together, and hopefully is as reliable and accurate as it can be. And we always measure all the error that is in all that side of things. So that's the starting point. As it goes through these large language models, then we start to have new methods to figure out whether the answer is right. So we do that in multiple ways, actually. So we have multiple layers to that. So we have a testing framework, which we have thousands of what we call prompts, what you write into the box, and we know the answers to those prompts. And so every time we update the system, we run it through all of these prompts and we get test scores of how it does, just like a human would have a test. So one of the things we've been doing over the last few months, as well as developing the methodology to test the thing, is to as we're improving the accuracy and some of these tweaks that we've been doing, I was talking about, we run it through these tests and we see how it runs, and we set our own baselines at the moment. Say, well, okay, if it passes here, then we move on. Now, eventually, we'd love to publish the way we do that too, so others can use it as well. So, like, this is another science in itself. So it's we want to make sure we're publishing that as well to help people with their own systems. So that's one way. The other way is we have across our partnerships and inside the World Resources Institute, many people that know a huge amount about all of these ecosystems across the world and what's going on in very, very fine detail. We have country offices all over the place with experts who know precisely what's happening everywhere. And so we use those expert tests as well, run on the system, and we generate like statistics on how well it does there. So we kind of have these sort of multiple layers. I think we're going to become more, over the next year or two, we as a whole community will be way more sophisticated in how we measure the general accuracy and precision of these systems. But then I would add one more thing to it, which is, as humans, we don't always, even even if we're not being deliberate about it, we often don't say, we often say things that are wrong or aren't quite accurate. And one way humans get around that is the way we generalize, right? So if you ask me what date when I had my last birthday, I could say last summer, last June, June the 20th, at 12 o'clock, that kind of thing. Like, so we can actually build into these systems generalizations which help you understand the level of precision that you need to know in the data that, or the insights that are providing you. So some of it is a sort of a test problem, and some of it is a how we get these things to communicate with us problem. And sort of, yeah, we're in the midst of figuring out what the best way is right now. So it's a very exciting period, but it's also, one more thing I would add to that is we try and surface, or we're trying to get better and better at surfacing what we know about the era as we're building it. So maybe you don't see it because you don't want to see tons of information the minute you look at an interface, but you drop it down, you can start to see everything that's going on behind the scenes. And I think that level of transparency is really important too.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the time we have. I'm just going to put on that last slide. Thank you all for joining us again. As a reminder, everyone registered to this webinar will get an email inviting you to test out Global Nature Watch and also to provide us with your feedback. And that is so important to us. So we hope you will all get a chance to try it out and help us shape the future of this tool and what it could look like, right? What the potential of it is. So thank you again all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day or evening or night or wherever you are in the world. We hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.